Horror movies are so often filled with awful, horrible, unlikable, detestable characters, and sometimes that sort of description isn't solely reserved for the villains. Whether by accident or design, there have been plenty of horror heroes who have been, well, insufferable pricks. It may be misjudged writing, it might be smartly judged writing, or it might be due to an under or overdone performance, but certain protagonists forever have you shaking your head. With that in mind, I'm Andrew from What Culture Horror, and here are the 10 most unlikable horror movie heroes. Number 10, Sergeant Hooker, Leprechaun 4 in Space. To be fair, whenever Leprechaun 4 in Space comes up in the conversation, you know it's not going to be for any particularly positive reason. Taking the franchise up into the stars and to the future of 2096, here we have Warwick Davis's Lubden trying to marry an alien princess. Having tinkered with the plans of a mining organization, our Leprechaun is being hunted by some space marines, headed up by Sergeant Hooker, or as some of his friends know him, Metalhead. Amongst the numerous Star Wars and Aliens rip-offs, Hooker is part jock, part 1950s sexist, part roid rage, as he admires his biceps, fires guns and screams, and tells women to get back in the kitchen. To the credit of actor Tim Colcheri, though, he did actually serve in the Marines, and at one point was a professional golfer before injury brought that to an end. Don't say we don't ever bring some mild trivia for you here at What Culture Horror. Number 9, Andy Nicholas, Jaws 2. This one does feel a smidge harsh, with Andy Nicholas having such a small role in Jaws 2 and taking up a leadership role when he and his pals are attacked by the film's great white shark. The problem is, actor Gary Springer is a little too cheesy in his performance as Andy, making any scene he's in feel a little insincere. Andy's actions should actually make him likable, but the delivery of those actions have the opposite effect, turning the audience off the character. With only a few roles after Jaws 2, Gary Springer moved into the publicist side of the entertainment industry, and also randomly reached out to me on X after seeing the written version of this list to ask whether he should be honoured to be included here, or whether he should wish for my beloved Wrexham AFC to never win a game of football again, and for me to have a close-up encounter with a shark. Yes, that did really happen. Number 8, Claire, Superhost. A stunning hidden gem, Brandon Christensen's Superhost finds lovebirds and travel vloggers Teddy and Claire staying at an idyllic remote property owned by the erratic Rebecca. Well, not actually owned by Rebecca, for she's murdered the homeowners and is merely pretending to be the owner. Superhost is great in how it doesn't try to kid you about its premise, making it clear that all isn't right with the erratic Rebecca from the get-go. As such, the enjoyment is in seeing the phenomenal Gracie Gillam go through the emotions as Rebecca and predicting when the character will fully embrace the chaos. While Teddy is sincere and warm, his girlfriend Claire sadly lacks in that area, being uncomfortably obsessed with getting those likes, shares and subscribes for their YouTube channel, to the point she even thinks a genuine marriage proposal was just simply a stage masterstroke to get more views. So when Claire ends Superhost on the wrong side of the crazed Rebecca, you don't particularly feel any sympathy for her. Number 7, Franklin Hardesty, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. By default, you should want to get behind Franklin, with him clearly having suffered in life due to the disability that's left him in a wheelchair. Added to that, he and his sister Sally are visiting their grandfather's grave after reports of that site being vandalized. While there's clearly sympathy for him, Franklin is simply childish, selfish, abusive, and downright rude, making you feel sorry for those stuck with him on the Texas roads. Even Franklin actor Paul A. Partain, who sadly passed away in 2005, said in interviews how the character was a whiny bastard and how he'd remain in character on set purposely to annoy his co-stars. Number 6, Lis Creed, Pet Sematary. Pet Sematary is a tale about grief, or to be more specific, about how experiencing grief is an inevitable part of life we cannot run away from. When the Creed family moved from busy Chicago to rural Maine, their new neighbor Judd, played by a magnificent Fred Gwynne, introduces them to a pet cemetery in the woods behind their house, and it's not long before those woods become the downfall of the Creeds. Once the family cat church is killed after being hit by a truck, panicked family patriarch Lewis is worried about how his daughter Ellie will react. Seeking advice from Judd, Lewis is taken past the pet cemetery and to a special burial ground. After burying Church there, wouldn't you know it, but the cat returns to life the very next day. Just extra aggressive and with glowing eyes, which is always a good sign. When Ellie's younger brother Gage is likewise killed by a passing truck, rather than deal with that death, Lewis digs up his son and reburies him in that same special burial ground. And of course, Gage returns as a murderous beast. And when Gage kills his mother Rachel, what does Lewis do? Yep, obviously he buries her in that same spot, because what could go wrong? It's hard to feel sorry for Lewis when he keeps making the same mistake time and time again, bringing on even more misery for himself rather than facing up to his grief. Number 5. Tina Williams and Sam Loomis, Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers. Rachel Carruthers was a brilliant character in Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers, so of course she was killed off in the opening act of Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers, and replaced by her best pal Tina Williams. As such, Tina took on the big sister role for young Jamie Lloyd, the niece of Michael. The problem is, Tina is just so annoying. From the moment she's introduced and does some awful song and dance thing, to skipping out on Jamie to be with her greaser a-hole boyfriend, to pulling a fake Michael Myers prank on 2 armed cops on high alert. Yeah, Tina is just hard to get behind. And while this entry was to be all about Tina, a recent Halloween 5 rewatch means Sam Loomis can't not be featured here too. Donald Pleasance's franchise favourite has always been intense and erratic. That's part of his charm after all. But Halloween 5 goes way too far with Loomis, as he spends the movie bullying a bunch of traumatised kids, uses Jamie as bait to draw out Michael, locks the poor kid in the Myers house, breaks a police radio to stop outside contact, and literally goads Michael into a game of what Loomis calls Catch the Little Girl. Not cool, Sam. So not cool. Number 4. Annie, Dashcam. Part of the aim of Rob Savage's Dashcam is essentially to get you to root for a hero who's pretty darn dislikable. That hero would be live streamer Annie, played by Annie Hardy as a semi-fictionalized version of herself, who winds up in an eerie situation involving a creepy woman who has murderous desires, where it relates to Annie, her pal Stretch, and anyone else who happens to come into this lady's crosshairs. The thing is, Annie is brimming with self-entitlement, berates anyone with opposing views, and constantly oversteps the line to let people know her thoughts on the pandemic restrictions, vaccinations, masks, the homeless, and her obnoxious way of championing MAGA. While in one sense Rob Savage achieved his aim in delivering a central protagonist who's hard to root for, in another sense that aim was way overachieved and it becomes hard to truly invest in Annie and her story. Number 3. Shelly Finkelstein, Friday the 13th, Part 3. In fairness, you could fill out this entire list with dislikable characters from the Friday the 13th franchise. You're not getting away with this, Ted or Teddy. Yeah, you're on the radar. But it's Friday the 13th Part 3 Shelly who gets the nod here. Shelly spends the bulk of his screen time pulling boy who cried wolf pranks or spooking his friends, to the point that when Jason Voorhees does actually turn up, they think it's just Shelly goofing around. Plus, Shelly's decision to run over one of their motorbikes brings bikers Fox, Loco and Ali to Higgins Haven, which nearly results in the barn being burnt down. And even when Shelly himself is killed, his friends think it's just one more prank. Number 2. Mika Sloat, Paranormal Activity. While it's one thing to be skeptical, the way Mika is so dismissive in Paranormal Activity had you totally rooting for something awful to happen to him. For Mika's girlfriend Katie, she's concerned about spooky shenanigans in their new home, even more so because she thinks this could be the same eerie presence that's tormented her since childhood. To his credit, Mika does set up cameras to record any spooky goings on, but he does so firmly with his tongue in cheek and with a sense of mockery. And when a psychic warns the couple to avoid communication with this presence, Mika of course doubles down by getting a Ouija board, all as poor Katie becomes increasingly angry at him. Thankfully, Mika gets his comeuppance in the film's closing moments, killed off screen by the possessed Katie and then having his corpse thrown at the watching audience. Number 1. Gale Weathers, the Scream franchise. As of this recording, the only legacy character still involved with Scream is Courtney Cox's Gale Weathers, and she's a tough hero to really ever get behind. For every good deed she does, Gale can't help but undermine that by doing something extremely scummy. For instance, having helped save the day in 2022 Scream, she outright promises Sam and Tara Carpenter that she won't write a book about their story, but will instead write a tribute piece to poor Dewey Riley. Of course, when Gale reappears in Scream 6, she's absolutely gone back on that promise and written a book on the most recent Woodsboro murders, which earns her a punch from Tara, which obviously follows on from similar punches from Sidney Prescott in the first 2 Scream movies, as Gale is forever unable to resist her very worst instincts when it comes to breaking a story or making a book from someone else's misery. But hey, there's always Scream 7, because things are going so well for that film right now.